Welcome to New Song Cafe at worshiptogether.com. We're here in Brighton, England with Stuart Townend, and we're talking about the song By Faith. By Faith, this is another good song on your album, and I'd like to go into the story of that song, because I know it's a co-write with Keith and Kristen and Getty, so tell me how that all came about.
Yeah, quite often Keith and I have these conversations about what songs we think might be missing from the canon of songs in the church, and because there are lots of songs on particular themes, but actually some themes often don't get covered as much. And I think faith was one of those things that we talked about, and thought actually it'd be good to write a song about faith. And there are some songs around faith in a very immediate sense, but actually the Bible's got a lot to say about how faith has shaped the great characters of the Bible. Yes. And you particularly think of Hebrews 11 and that whole catalogue, that history of how it was faith that caused people to do extraordinary things for God. And so we thought it'd be good to write a song about that. So Keith had written the melody, and we kind of, I think, tossed the melody around a little bit and worked on it and stuff, and managed to get somewhere with it. And then we thought about, I started writing lyrics, and Kristen was writing ideas as well for lyrics, and that kind of came together. That's how it usually works. Keith goes away and writes melodies, then we kind of shape it up, and then Kristen and I will sit down together or separately and start putting ideas together. So what we wanted to do was chart a very biblical perspective of what faith is about, based on Hebrews 11. So it starts with the earliest Old Testament characters, going through to the prophets, who by faith were prophesying the coming of Christ, and how then from the coming of Christ, his death, resurrection, how then that comes to the church in faith, taking the message of Christ and taking it out to the world, and recognizing that right now, as we preach the gospel, there needs to be a faith element to believe that the power of the gospel is actually going to bring people to Christ. So it's a kind of a story. It kind of goes chronologically and tries to take us through that whole, but gives us a perspective of what what role faith has played right through history, and the role that faith plays now in our Christian lives. So it gives a kind of perspective, and the chorus is a sort of a rallying call to say we're going to stand on his promises. We're going to stand on what he has said, and we're going to run the race by faith, which is what Hebrews explores as well, of course.
And how many verses had you originally written for this song? Or?
Oh, I usually write loads and loads and loads. So what I try and do is I just start writing, and this was also with Kristen. So Kristen was sending stuff in, and we kind of worked together on it, and ended up, I think, I don't know, there were loads of verses, but then you try and compress it, and you kind of go, what is this song about? And I usually have a little sort of thing that I work by, and you think if you should be able to describe what the song is about in 10 words or less. So it's a focused song, so you know what you're saying. Because songs have got a habit of being a little bit of everything, but not really getting into any depth or really having a clear message. So we wanted to try and make sure that this had a clear message. And so I think we ended up we managed to get it down to 4 verses, which is quite good.
Very good. Because that's the interesting thing, isn't it, with the modern hymn, where each verse has got that story element to it, and then, as you say, you keep building, and also the whole thing of, it's not just about now, it's like you say, like the heroes of faith.
I think that helps to build our perspective and build our faith when you actually plug it into what has gone before. So it's not just about my experience right now or my little life here. It's actually, we are part of a huge story. And we need to have a sense that we are part of that. And that this is all part of God's developing and growing the movement or the kingdom that God is bringing all through the centuries. That it's all part, it's all connected, and he's going to bring it to a glorious conclusion.
I mean, I love the picture in Hebrews where the heroes of faith are cheering us on.
Yes.
And so it feels like that.
And you can draw strength from that. Because you're right, their testimony is, he was faithful to me, he'll be faithful to you. Fantastic. Well, let's hear the song. of those who prove his faithfulness, who walk by faith and not by sight. By faith our fathers ruled the earth with the power of his promise in their hearts, of a holy city built by God's own hand, a place where peace and justice reign. We will stand as children of the promise. We will fix our eyes on him, our souls reward, till the race is finished and the work is done. We'll walk by faith and not by sight.
So I just want to ask you about the arrangement of the song, because obviously
Okay.
Keith and Kristen on their album, they have their version.
It's a different
It's
version.
a different version. And so tell me about how you've taken the song and given it your own
Yes.
style.
Well, the song has been around for a couple of years, and so we've probably both done it in various ways
Okay.
over the last couple of years. I think their version is very much their style, which is probably more piano based because Keith is a piano player,
Yeah.
and so they have a particular style. He's coming from a different musical tradition in many ways as well, which is slightly more classically influenced. When we came to doing it for this album, we were looking for something that was more acoustic, something that's slightly more folk. It's got a little tinge, I suppose, of something slightly more country, almost as well. But really looking for melodies, or melodies that would help to kind of move the song along. So there's the little turnaround that actually each time a couple of instruments get added to it, and it's kind of taken by the whistle and on the album, and the fiddle. So it kind of moves that, and then a slide guitar and stuff. So it's got that strong sort of melody that's connecting each of the verses around the chorus. To play this, I'm using a more conventional conventional tuning. Quite often I use quite an open tuning, but this is so I'm using I've got capo 3, and so I'm playing G chord shapes. So it's in B flat, but I'm playing it in G shapes. So again, as quite often it's quite good to do with the G shape. I'm kind of there's no thirds in it, so it's all just fifths. But it gives me a chance to play that melody. Like that. Like that. And with this, I think we doubled it with banjo and other instruments as well. So it's got that sort of almost just quite a country sort of, quite a rustic almost kind of feel.
Because what I noticed when you're playing it is it's not just straight chords, that there's little lines going in between lines as well.
And I think that helps to move it along and make it a bit more sense of it musically and stuff. So I'm doing various things, but keeping that very solid as the sort of foundation. So there's a little sort of harmony thing that goes with the melody. So kind of following that. So, but it's not a difficult song to play. But it's quite nice to be able to bring some instruments that perhaps you wouldn't normally use. So it's quite nice to bring a fiddle in and to play that, and whistles or flutes or whatever. I think those instruments sometimes have got a little bit sidelined in recent years. So we've kind of brought in a much more rocky kind of sound quite often. So there's a lot of electric guitars and quaver, eighth note bass things and stuff, and driving drums. So it's actually quite nice to kind of provide a context where we could actually use some different instruments.
And different people in the congregation can be then then could be involved.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. Yes, I think it's very easy for us to kind of go down one channel a little bit too much and think that's the sound. When in fact, I think there's a whole variety of sounds that we can explore.
Yeah, very good. Stuart, I just want to ask you about the key of the song, because obviously when Kristen sings it, she might have a different key. Or
it should be a bit lower.
A bit lower, okay.
Yes. Yeah, I'm doing it in B flat. I think, let me think, probably the bottom note that people are singing is a B flat, below middle C, and the top note they're singing is the D, which is an octave and one note above, which I think is probably as far as you want to go with a congregation of men and women singing together. So the D might be a little bit of a struggle for some women, but I think it kind of fits. You've got to look at the range of the song, but you've also got to look where most of the melody is happening. Yes. Quite often, because if most of the melody is down towards the bottom end of that range, then you need to make sure that it's got enough life. Yes. You know, to keep going, you know, and to give it some energy, because if most of it is down low, you need to have that in a middle range. Otherwise, actually, the song doesn't quite have the impact that you want it to have, because people are singing down in their boots all the time. So I think that's the best key congregationally, although Kristen might differ.
The other question I was going to ask is, obviously with 4 verses, then how do you vary that, or do you?
Yes, I think it's a challenge arrangement wise. I mean, what we did on the album was the drums didn't come in until like second or third verse. Yeah. I mean, the whole album started just with me, I think, just playing. So I'm not even playing the bass notes. I'm just playing just like 3 notes. So it's a very simple start, and then you begin to add things in. So you do get a dynamic, and quite often that's a good thing for worship teams and worship bands to think about. Is actually sometimes you need to strip it back a little bit early on. Otherwise the payoff comes too early, and you're too big too early, then you've got nowhere else to go by the time you get halfway through the third verse. So you need to think more in terms of being very disciplined and keeping it fairly spacious and open and simple to start with, because that gives you lots of possibilities to be able to move in different directions and gives you more dynamic range as the song continues. Because
that's an interesting dynamic of hymns, isn't it? You know, you don't want every verse to be the same, and obviously the lyrical content of each verse is different. Yes. So you can really...
And in classic hymns, quite often, then a verse will come down at a certain point, or there may be a descant, or alternative chords, or whatever. Change that. With this, we didn't do that. We just started quite simply, because it is essentially quite a simple sort of song, and wanted to keep that simplicity musically. So we didn't want to kind of do alternative chords that didn't quite feel like that would work. So then you have to think in terms of keeping it very sparse to begin with, and then move it along as the verses develop.
Very good.
We will stand as children of the promise.